Today, I'll talk you through the 7 types of mistake I've made and that hopefully you can avoid when it comes to designing and implementing employee engagement processes. Hello and welcome back. This is episode 5 of our video series, and by now you know what employee engagement is. You understand that it also needs employee enablement for best results, and you're equipped to make a strong business case for investing in employee engagement in your organisation. If you haven't got the engagement ball rolling in your business so far, hopefully this video series is helping you to feel more prepared and more confident to be able to do so soon. But getting it right is not easy, and if you're anything like me, you're probably going to make a few mistakes along the way. Today's episode is about me sharing honestly some of the mistakes that I've made and seeing others making, so that you can hopefully hit the ground running and be more successful from the next video onwards to the rest of the series. Looking back over the years, I can group my biggest learnings around employee engagement under 7 categories that we're going to run through today. Those categories are ensuring that you have a correct and shared understanding of the whole concept, putting a clear strategy in place, forming a plan for action, communicating with the right people at the right time in the right way, the application of the tools and processes, ensuring follow-up, and making sure that measurement of progress and results is an integral part of the whole system. So there's quite a lot to cover, so we better get started. The first and most fundamental mistake is allowing conversations to happen around engagement without first nailing down a clear definition that works for your organisation. Remember the 4 caveats that I gave you in episode 1. Employee engagement is not the same as satisfaction or happiness. It's not just a survey. It's not the same as engaging with your employees, and it's certainly not just something for HR to worry about. At a strategic level, I sometimes see organisations going into engagement for the wrong reasons. And there are 2 versions of this. Senior leaders either sign up to employee engagement initiatives purely because they're influenced by how it looks internally or externally, maybe because it's a sexy hot topic at the moment, or because a client or a competitor is doing it. Or another version of it is that they sign up to engagement thinking that it's a way to squeeze more out of the employees, as opposed to, in a sustainable way, enabling better work out of employees, which is something totally different. If these are the reasons for signing up to employee engagement, it's probably not going to be successful, because as soon as something newer and shinier comes along, it's going to be dropped in favour of that. And the second mistake I see getting made at the strategic level is deciding that engagement is not for your company or industry, that it's not going to work. And that's just fundamentally wrong, because at their core, people are motivated by the same things and look for the same things more or less from their experience in the working world. Yes, maybe the language or the branding or how it's pitched, the level at which it's pitched into your business needs to be tailored, but that's not the same as saying that it just won't work. My advice here really is to give it a good try and look at the evidence that's in front of you and make a decision based on that, rather than a blanket opinion that it's not going to work in a particular industry. In terms of planning, I learned very quickly that it's a big mistake to aim for too much too soon. Yes, you'll be under pressure to deliver results as soon as possible, but don't worry, you'll still have impressive results from small actions taken in a focused and consistent way. Those improvements, you'll start noticing them very, very quickly. So stick to the basics, maintain that focus, and you'll soon see decent levels of understanding, trust and buy-in that you can build on then for version 2.0, 3.0 and so on into the future. Something else to be aware of under the planning heading is that either in your own excitement and enthusiasm or under pressure from above, you don't allow enough time, you don't plan for the time needed for people's mindsets, beliefs, habits to change. And really a few months are going to be needed for that to happen, to get you to that new evolved culture that you're looking for out of your engagement initiative. In contrast, the final mistake under the planning category is getting paralysed by the planning process. Eventually, something has to actually happen to deliver the results. Don't get stuck on just planning and trying to get every minute detail correct. It's far better to ship something that's imperfect, and I don't mean something that's blatantly wrong, but if you've brought everybody together and you've designed something that you are more or less confident is going to work, get a pilot group together, give it a try, and build off the success and the confidence that comes out of that, as well as the insights that you pull out of that scientific approach to things. So next up, the communication category, and the first mistake I want you to avoid here is not involving senior people in the communication process. If you've done a good job of convincing them of the business case like we covered in the last episode, getting their endorsement shouldn't be that difficult. But endorsement on its own isn't enough, because endorsement is somebody signing their name to it or putting a stamp of approval on it, and that's kind of passive. You're going to need more than endorsement. What you'll need is buy-in and involvement. And the only way that your people in your organisation will know that the senior people are involved and that they buy in is if they see them and hear them. So the best solution to this problem is to make sure that the communications are coming from the senior people in your business. In our haste to get started, we can sometimes forget to inform our employees and preferably include them in what's happening, because remember, engagement isn't done to your people, it's not done for your people. It really is something that can only be done with your people. So I would say it's an important step to bring at least a steering group together from across the business, get their input, get their thoughts, and not only will that eventually help you get better buy-in when you launch, but inevitably it'll result in a better process, full stop. The next mistake to avoid is about communication, yes, but particularly I'm probably thinking about the training events and the communication events where you bring people together on this one. And the mistake is trying to convert everyone. And I mean that in two ways. First of all, if you're setting out to give the hard sell and convince everybody to buy into this new way of thinking, they're going to run a mile, and that's natural. It's far better to present the strategy and the facts and the benefits in a compelling, enthusiastic way in the hopes of bringing people along, and then also spell out what's expected of them from now on, what's going to change. So that's one important point. And the second thing is, you could waste vast amounts of energy and time trying to convince every single person. Not everybody is going to buy into it, and that's plain fact. Far better to put your energies into the group of people who will buy into it, the majority of people who will buy into it and who will deliver your results. In a later episode, I'll come back and talk to you about what can you do with those actively disengaged people who are resisting it and making it difficult for others. But for now, it's about focusing on the majority rather than feeling you have to bring every single person on board. Another big communication mistake is not communicating your progress. After you've started your engagement initiative, you're going to have to work hard for the first 2 or 3 months to lay down the roots and the foundations for success. This involves regular, planned communications, preferably on the positive side or at least constructive, and make sure also to celebrate the wins and the progress that is being made, so that will beget more success and momentum into the future. Using the wrong language is also a big mistake when it comes to employee engagement. So saying satisfaction when you really mean engagement, or calling it a chat when it's really an open, honest, structured, two-way conversation between employee and manager. The language that you use impacts the trust and the buy-in that you get back from your people. So really it needs to be thought out, it needs to be clear and pitched at the right level for the organisation that you're working in. In terms of the application of these tools and processes, one of the big mistakes I see made over and over is just assuming that it's a HR-owned initiative. And the truth is that once managers have been trained and are clear on what's expected of them and how they can proceed, they now have the responsibility to take ownership of the engagement of their team. And when you can get to that place, HR are able to step into a very important empowering and support role to enable the managers to get the results that they want. In some organisations, a big problem to overcome is senior leaders thinking that this is not for them. And people aren't stupid, and what I mean by that is every training program that I've run in employee engagement, I've been asked by somebody in the group, if not numerous people in the group, is my boss doing this? And is my boss's boss doing this too? And the reason they're asking that is they buy into it and they understand it, but they know from years of experience that if it's not on their boss's radar, or if their boss doesn't genuinely care about it, soon it's going to disappear. So why bother putting the effort into it right now? The places where I've seen the best results are organisations where at every level, all the way to the top, the tools are used in the same way, for the same reasons, and as part of the whole system. Next, not having standardised materials or tools is a mistake we need to avoid. You can't afford for your engagement materials and tools to be interpreted by managers based on their preferences, their personalities, their experiences, their level of skill or knowledge. When you allow individual managers to skip parts of the process or to reword parts of the process, things start to get diluted. And I don't mean that we want an army of robots acting in exactly the same way, but what I do mean is that we need a set of prescribed tools and ways of acting that we know delivers the results that we're looking for. And the last mistake to avoid around the application and use of the tools is not ensuring that it's joined up as a system. Now, it's true to say that if most of your managers are using most of the tools, most of their people, most of the time, in a mostly correct way, you are going to get results. But to get really massive and predictable results, you're going to need to have it all joined up. Senior leaders need to know what's happening, who's doing what, and they also need a channel to bring all of that actionable intelligence that's being gathered in front of them so that big decisions can be made and big improvements can be made based on real evidence that your managers are gathering through their engagement activities. So on the follow-up side of things, the quickest way to kill your engagement initiative is to fail to follow up on the issues that are raised. If your people are being honest and telling you the things that need to be improved to increase their motivation and commitment, then it's your duty to take action on that. And by taking action, I don't mean creating an action plan and sending it back to HR. We mean actually following through on it. As well as following through and taking the action, it's important to feed back and appraise everybody of where those actions stand. Tell them what you've done and what the current state of play is, and if you can't or won't do something that's being raised, again tell them that too and explain why. And people will accept that and will at least then start to trust the process and trust you that if they raise something it will be listened to and, if possible, acted upon. The other mistake in terms of follow-up is not keeping managers accountable for their actions and their behaviours. Hopefully most of your managers will take ownership for the engagement of their team and for putting the new tools and practices in place. But if they don't, well then not only will their team have a problem, but other teams and other managers will start to notice, and that starts to form cracks in the whole process. If they can't keep their commitments, well then senior leaders need to have a mechanism in place to spot that early and to have the conversations with them to find out why that's the case, to reset expectations of what's needed to drive engagement forward. And they then need to keep their eye on that ball going forward to ensure that the engagement activities are, as we said earlier, a joined up effort across the whole business as part of a system that will drive the results we want. The last couple of mistakes we want to avoid fall under the heading of measurement. And probably the simplest and most predictable mistake that's made here is not measuring anything at all. We know that what gets measured gets done, and so if you don't have something in place, how will you know what you're aiming for, how far along you are, and how far you've got left to go? We'll talk about what you can measure and how in a later episode. I see this final mistake being made in organisations of all sizes all the time, and it's focusing only on the annual employee engagement score. I'm not saying that it's not important, of course it's very important, but it's not the only or even the main metric that makes a difference. In episode 7 I'll talk more about measurement, but at a basic level the point to make is that this once a year or sometimes twice a year measure is an output, and it's far more constructive to put the measures around the inputs, in other words the behaviours and the actions that make a difference to employee engagement, rather than always fixating on the results afterwards. We need both, but it's a mistake to focus only on the lagging indicators. We'll talk more about that in episode 7 though. Well, that's today's video, and believe it or not, there were 19 mistakes that I shared across those 7 categories. I know that was a lot of detail and it was quite a long video, but I think Muhammad Ali put it best when he said, it's not the mountains ahead to climb that wear you out, but the pebble in your shoe. And what I mean by that is hopefully today's video helps you not only to choose the right mountain to climb, but to keep those 19 pebbles out of your shoe while you're on that exciting engagement journey. Finally, if you can think of a 20th mistake or pebble, let us know in the comments below, or if you've made any of these mistakes or have a story to share, drop me a line and I'll give you some sympathy and maybe we can look at ways to get you back on track. That's it for today's video. I'll see you in video number 6, where we'll get down to business and launch our Get Started section of this video series. See you then.